Nothing like the refreshing taste of Ghostface coffee to get you up in the morning. Just that stab in the face that you need to truly caffeinate your entire system. Today we got ourselves an update on old Ghostface and the Strangers remake and what the heck is going on with that. Let's get into it.
Well, sometimes that is better.
Hey everybody, what's up? KillJoy Jake here, and instead of having friends, I have horror movies. Today we're talking a little bit about the Strangers remake. Oh, and there's actually going to be 3 of them. But primarily we're making this a Scream 6 update based off of a brand new quote from Melissa Barrera herself. I can't wait to get into this update, but first I'm going to need y'all to like this video and subscribe. I would greatly appreciate that a whole bunch. Let's get to 13,000 subscribers before October. Wouldn't that be perfect timing? Come on, let's make that happen. And also, if you don't care about the Strangers, you just want to get to the Scream update, well, no worries, there are chapters on this video so you can skip around to whatever you want to hear. But getting into this, the Strangers update, talking about the Strangers 3, 4, and 5. In the last update we did on the new Strangers films, we talked a little bit about the director who was pegged to do these new movies. That is, of course, Renny Harlin, who did Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master. Harlin is more often associated with some of his other movies, of course, like Die Hard 2 and Cliffhanger, but I think he's a pretty interesting choice here, and he's a massive fan of horror, and he's very excited to get back into it. But today's update concerns the cast and the overall plot that we got recently, talking about where this movie's going and who's going to be involved. Madeleine Petsch and Froy Gutierrez will star in this upcoming Strangers 3, whatever the heck they're gonna call it. They're marketing it here as a remake. The new Strangers film will follow Petsch's character as she drives cross-country with her longtime boyfriend, played by Froy, to begin a new life in the Pacific Northwest. When their car breaks down in Venus, Oregon, they're forced to spend the night in a secluded Airbnb where they are terrorized from dusk till dawn by 3 masked strangers. Lionsgate plans from there to expanding the story in new and unexpected ways with its sequels. That Airbnb aspect is really making me think about Barbarian. Interesting. Another weird thing about that is that Roy Lee served as a producer on both of these films, which is also just kind of a strange coinky-dink, I would say. Man's just terrified of Airbnbs, I guess. I don't know. Now, this Deadline article I'm using for this video also goes on to talk about some Renny Harlin quotes that are very interesting, but it essentially just breaks down to, I love horror movies, and who fucking doesn't, Renny? I mean, seriously. To me, the more interesting thing here is that plot synopsis and also the whole idea of billing this thing as a remake. What does that entail? Are we going to over-explain things with the new Strangers movie? If you've been watching all my videos lately, you're probably sick of hearing me say this same argument about every single movie, but this applies to the Strangers maybe even more than it does to the Halloween franchise. You really cannot over-explain things here. The best part about the original Strangers film, and even Johannes Roberts' crazy sequel that I love and maybe even like better than the original, is how unexplainable and how fucking weird the whole thing is. It's not just a home invasion thriller. These are 3 random strangers that are coming into this house killing people, and the only reason they offer as to why is because they were home. Johannes Roberts does an amazing job with the sequel where once again he really doesn't explain too much. Some, if not all, of the strangers die in that sequel and you get to see some of their faces, but not much more than that is really explained in that sequel, and I'm hoping for the same thing here in this 3rd entry. By billing this thing as a remake, it almost kind of entails that you have to have a brand new origin story, but I think that's what's so great about these characters is that they have never really had an origin story. We really don't know why they started killing, and I really hope we don't have 3 movies just explaining that, because that's the Thorn trilogy all over again. Producer Courtney Solomon says about the films, when setting out to remake The Strangers, we felt there was a bigger story to be told, which could be as powerful, chilling, and terrifying as the original, and could really expand the world. Shooting this story as a trilogy allows us to create a hyper-real and terrifying character study. We're fortunate to be joining forces with Madeleine Petsch, an amazing talent whose character is the driving force of this story. So once again, something that actually kind of gets me worried about this film franchise is I really don't want them to over-explain things. Not everything needs a backstory, not everything needs lore, like as intense as some other franchises, and The Strangers is a perfect example of that. I'm down to do 3 movies with The Strangers, but if you're going to focus on, oh my god, this is where the Strangers came from, oh, it was a meteor the whole time, I knew it, Don't, please, just don't do that. That would suck. I'm a massive advocate for like just wild creativity in slasher sequels. I have been nonstop saying that about the new Scream films, and honestly about Halloween Ends too. But with The Strangers, I think what's so great about it is you can't just alter that DNA of what a franchise is entirely, which one of those things to me is how weird, unexplainable, and bizarre the situation is. Doing an entire trilogy of films that explains that would suck. Now doing an entire trilogy that focuses on a character and her backstory and possible connection to the Strangers, where it doesn't really explain them, but they're always the main antagonist of those films, now that could be cool. Is that a likely scenario for Hollywood to follow? Not really, but hey, you know what? I got my hope alive. I'm gonna stay optimistic about this. I'm really hoping it's good. I mean, we have a great team of people attached to this. Madeline Petch is from Riverdale, which I've heard is pretty good for the most part. I was talking about Roy Lee earlier, who's executive producing this film, and like I said, also served as I think a producer on Barbarian, or maybe executive producer, EP, whatever the fuck, I don't know. And Rennie Harlan directed Nightmare 4, so there you go. Very underrated Freddy sequel, I would say. We have a great team of people behind this film, and I have a lot of faith in this project. I'm just really hoping that it doesn't over-explain things, because they don't need to. We don't have to over-explain everything in horror movies, and I will stop saying that because, wow, I'm sure some of you are sick of hearing it. But now it's time to get into the Ghostface news. Ho 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 ho! That was the slowest sip of coffee I've ever taken. Speaking with Perry Nemiroff from Collider, Melissa Barrera has spilled the beans on a certain sequence happening in the new Scream film. She may have just said a little too much about this new movie, and it's a pretty interesting quote. When asked what she could tell us about what it means to be chased by Ghostface in a big city rather than small-town Woodsboro, Barrera was enthusiastically forthcoming with her answer, saying it's like 20 times more mortifying. It's awful, because you also see how in a city like New York City, everyone is kind of doing their own thing, and someone is screaming for help and no one will come to their help. No one comes to help them. You know, like everyone's kind of like, I'm not getting into that. So it's mortifying because you're chased by Ghostface, but you also see humanity and how that reacts in a situation like that. Anyway, I think I've probably said too much. Listen, I don't know if she's detailing an entire scene here, but that's kind of what it sounds like to me, and that's pretty exciting. This Collider article that I'm using compares that to Helen Shivers' chase scene from I Know What You Did Last Summer, possibly my favorite from that movie. That would be pretty cool if they did something like that in a new Scream movie. After this arduous chase sequence, Sarah Michelle Gellar's character in that film runs out down an alleyway with this parade going on. She tries to scream for help as the killer gets her right there. That could be really fucking upsetting, but we could even play into that a little further. Something that a lot of people didn't like about the last movie that I personally loved and I thought really worked pretty well was the whole idea that you can get killed in broad daylight nowadays and no one would give a fuck. I've seen so many people complain about that Judy death, but like nobody's outside in the suburbs during the day, like on a Tuesday or whenever the fuck she got killed. Like no one's home. They're at work. That's like a perfect time to kill people. I think that's totally genius on Radio Silence's part. I don't know, fight me. To take that a step further with a chase sequence in this new film would be pretty dope. There's this thing in psychology called the bystander effect, where it's like if you see something awful happening, essentially, you have this weird like force in your body telling you to stay away from that because it's like danger, danger bad, stay away from danger. The bystander effect is described as the inhibiting influence of the presence of others on a person's willingness to help someone in need. Research has shown that even in an emergency, a bystander is less likely to extend help when he or she is in the real or imagined presence of others when he or she is alone. It's your brain essentially trying to help you, but it's also kind of really selfish and awful, but unfortunately we all do it, and biologically we're programmed to do that, which is kind of terrible to think about. I see this argument all the time about like, oh, well, if you heard someone like screaming in an alleyway asking for help, you would totally go help them. But like, biologically speaking, you wouldn't. And you might be someone saying, well, I would help, and that's awesome. Good for you. You're a hero. We appreciate you. Thank you so much for your willingness to help us. But when it actually gets to the thick of it, most people wouldn't help, which is kind of fucked up and something we should play into more into horror movies, I would say. I just destroyed you with facts and logic. I think the big thing I'm getting at here, though, is you have to play with your setting. We already know that they are going to be doing that with Scream 6 from some of the set photos, which is really reassuring. You can't just set your movie in a cool place like New York City and not fuck around with some of this. There's so many many potential ways to die in New York City. You have to play around with some of those ideas, man, if you're gonna set your slasher film there. Oh my god, I love talking about Scream movies. I mean, there is so much potential for shit to happen in these movies that is just completely different from the last. And we only have like 6-7 months until this thing comes out, too. So, I mean, there is just so much exciting stuff around the corner for us horror fans. I mean, fuck, tomorrow Pearl comes out, the fucking prequel to X, which I can't wait for, and Maxine just got announced. Horror fans do be eaten, as the kids say. Well, I've been flapping my gums for a minute or two now, so what do you guys think about all this? Are you excited for a Scream 6 with a possible chase sequence outside, broad daylight, people are looking around and someone gets killed? Do you think that's realistic or not? Leave me something about it in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching this brand new Scream 6 update. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more horror content. Also, if you want to support this channel further, please become a Patreon supporter or become a channel member by clicking that join button on my page. Thank you guys so much for watching again, and as always, don't forget to kill it out there, y'all. Let's go!